Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. Who doesn't like a good road trip, right? The sights, the people, the experience as a whole is just amazing. Or maybe that's just me. I've dedicated the last month to driving across the country. I'm luckily able to, as my job allows me to work, from anywhere that has an internet connection. Cybersecurity, to be exact. I started in Florida and worked my way through the southeast region of the U.S. After moving through both of the Carolinas, I decided to swing by Tennessee while I was around. And I've got to say, the place was beautiful. The large metropolitan areas meshing with the deep forest was an amazing experience to be a part of. However, it wasn't always good. For example, in some of the more densely forested areas, I found it difficult to find coffee shops and other places with free Wi-Fi to work at. Luckily, however, GPS exists, and it's usually not too long until I find one. And if I can't, then I'll find somewhere where I can rent out for the night while I work. Well, one day after having very bad luck finding any establishments with free Wi-Fi so deep in the mountains, I got very lucky and was able to find a very nice 3-bedroom Airbnb cabin in the mountains for just $50 a night. After confirming payment for one night, I head to the area where the house is at. As I'm driving to the cabin, I can't help but feel uneasy. This place is really deep into the forest. I must have been driving for at least 30 minutes straight, just going deeper into the forested mountain range. All the while, the road keeps thinning and lowering in quality all the way. What had started as a strong, well-made 2-lane asphalt road eventually turned into a decrepit, 1-lane dirt road that barely even had a clear path, mostly thanks to the massive trees on either side, accompanied by the brush occasionally having grown on the road. Why in the hell would someone live this far out? I ask myself, frustrated with the condition of the area. Even this far into the road trip, I haven't gone down a road this bad yet. First time for everything, I guess. Eventually, after a few minutes of driving down the rundown road, if you can call it that, and I finally see it. The cabin. And I won't lie, this place was definitely worth the drive. It looked to be about 2,000 square feet, made of very fine finished wood logs and gorgeous windows giving an amazing look into the forest. Walking into the house, I'm surprised with how homey it looks. The first room is the living room, lit by a familiar and warming orange glow. Looking straight past the living room is the kitchen, sizable but not large, and nothing really notable about it. The living room, however, had a very elevated roof and a fireplace to the right wall. A few taxidermied animal heads lay about it, as well as the skull of an animal I don't think I've ever seen. Looking left of the living room, I see a sectioned couch with a very large mounted TV on a stand on the other side of the room. Looking left, I see the rest of the living room, which wasn't really anything special. Just a dining table and a few other pieces of furniture you'd expect to see in any house. Past the living room to the left was a sizable hallway, which is where my host told me the bathrooms and master bedroom were. I walked down the hall to the door at the very end, which led to the master bedroom, and again upon walking in, I'm blown away by the interior. It had a huge and very soft bed with enough pillows to smother a giant. And in front of the bed on the wall was another huge plasma TV. Walking to the right, I enter the bathroom, and of course its lavish, large granite countertops, and a marble bathtub, as well as a huge walk-in shower. There's no way this place is just $50 a night, I say to myself, blown away by the sheer luxury of a house so far away from civilization. I sit my stuff down and head to the back door, just past the kitchen, to get a look at the backyard. And it's even better than the front. There is a sizable pond that drains to a large stream flowing through the mountain. And of course, a well-kept lawn, all the way up until the tree line about 50 feet away. I stand there for a moment, impressed by the amazing area I've found myself in. It almost feels too good to be true. Walking back inside the lavish cabin, I go to the room to get my laptop so I can start working. And luckily, despite the GPS shenanigans, this place does have a stable internet connection. And so, I begin my work. The hours fly by, and I don't even realize how long I've been working until my app for work closes abruptly. I look at the Wi-Fi icon at the bottom of my laptop, and sure enough, it's dark, indicating my Wi-Fi connection has stopped working for some odd reason. Glancing at the time, I see it's 8 p.m. Looking out of the living room window, I also see the sun beginning to lower in the sky. But that isn't my biggest concern. My boss told me if I'm not done with this project by next week, I won't hold my position much longer. So getting this Wi-Fi back on is my biggest focus. Walking outside with my phone flashlight, I go around the house looking for cables that might have gotten unhooked or unplugged in some way. Eventually, I find the internet cable running down the side of the house and into the ground. But I'm dumbstruck as I realize the cable and the wall it's running along has massive and deep claw-looking incisions on it. Damn it! You live in the forest and don't have protected lines. I yell out in frustration, knowing that there's no way I can finish my work like this. I send a message to the host that I'm leaving early, and of course, let him know something. Shredded his cables. But when I get to the front door, I see there's pieces of paper hanging on it. At the top above, a page full of writing is bold, underlined letters that read, "View ASAP." Taking the curious-looking papers off the door, I take it inside and begin to read it. To whomever is reading, I am sorry for what you are going to go through these next 48 hours, as it is likely you will not be alive by the end of them. However, if you read this carefully and take it seriously, you might make it out of this alive, so keep reading and take this serious. This house was built for people like you, unsuspecting travelers, to be part of a game. Not a game like the ones you see on TV. You are now a new toy for an ancient evil. No matter how skeptical or superstitious that sounds, it's the truth. Many years ago, miners uncovered something deep in the mountainside they never should have, just a couple miles from where you are now. Every year it demands someone to take part in its demented games, and if they survive 48 hours, they get to live free. But in the past 6 years, nobody has survived, and I doubt you will be any different. This thing is good at what it does, but there is hope. There are rules you can follow that will greatly increase the chances of you surviving. These rules are a major part of whether or not you are still alive by the end of the next 2 days. Now this entity is clever and likes to play with its food. It will likely attempt to break your mental before ever physically harming you. However, its highly unpredictable nature makes it impossible to know its intention. It is likely it will do something neither you or I can plan for, so always be on your toes. Now that you know the entity and the situation, here are the rules for you. Do not go outside after dark, unless you have to, and be alert when it is. This is when it is most aggressive and active. Prioritize lights. It thrives in the dark. If the power goes out at some point, you need to go outside to the backyard and get them back on via resetting the power box just past the tree line. If the power box fails to reset, hide somewhere in the house and pray it doesn't know where you're at. Barricade the windows. The windows are the easiest place of entry, and they won't protect you for even a second once it arrives. There are supplies in the basement for you. Open the trap door in the master bedroom closet behind the suitcases. 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. are the only 2 hours each day where it will not attack you. I highly suggest you use these hours for sleep. It will come for you after 2 to 3 hours of you reading this. Prepare as soon as possible. Lock the doors, but do not barricade yourself inside. The doors will hold, and you may need to go on foot. Although if you do, you're pretty much already dead. You can't outrun this thing in its own backyard. Again, I'm sorry, and good luck. After I finish the papers, I just stand there for a moment, analyzing the words on the page for a few moments, dumbstruck, not knowing what to think. Was this a prank by the locals? No, I'm too deep in the forest for that. Hell, I don't know. There's no way this is real. This is something you'd write in a book. I go back to my room, balling up and tossing the fake paper into the empty fireplace for the next resident to ash. Grabbing my belongings I still had barely gotten unpacked, I rushed out of the house, heading straight for my truck. I had just thrown my stuff in the back seat when I noticed something was off. My back right wheel looks weird, like maybe it was going flat. A closer look around my truck reveals something terrifying. All my tires had been slashed. It takes me a moment to fully understand the gravity of the situation. Before I'm even able to let it, I hear a terrifying sound from deep in the forest. It sounded like a person, screaming like they'd just had every bone in their body broken. But it wasn't right. It had some sort of distortion in it, like a cross between man and beast.
Like it wanted something. I don't care how dangerous or stupid it is to drive on slashed tires on a mountain. I am getting out of here. I jump into the driver's seat, practically slam the keys into the ignition, turn, and nothing happens. The engine
doesn't even stutter. There is nothing but silence. I get out of my truck and rush to the front hood and swing it open. What I see inside shakes me to my core. My entire engine block had claw marks, destroying it entirely. A mess of slashed wires and bolt pieces lay scattered, spilled oil strewn across unevenly. Fresh oil. This was recent. I don't know why, but I just stood there, staring. My mind was broken by the unbelievable horror of the situation. My deep thinking is broken again by the inhuman howl again, this time seeming angrier, or maybe closer. This brings me to my bearings, and I begin sprinting back to the cabin, my eyes continually locking onto the tree line all the way. I swing open the door and instinctually lock it between my fingers, almost autonomously. Now rapidly breathing, trying to make sense of everything, I notice something in the fireplace, the papers. I ran toward them and frantically pulled them out and unfurled them from the crumpled ball I'd left them in. I begin scanning the paper, looking for anything it might have told me to do first. The rules. Rules 3 and 5 catch my eyes first. They seem to be the first things I should prioritize. I guess it's time to find this trap door, the third rule mentioned. Walking back to the master bedroom with haste, I can almost feel the sweat collecting on my brow as I slowly realize whoever wrote those papers weren't lying, and I may very well be dead in the next few hours. Arriving at the master bedroom's closet, I open the slide door and analyze my surroundings. Clothes, shoes, suits, suitcases. Kneeling before them, I reach to the back and pull at least half sloppily to the side, and it reveals the top of the trapdoor, an old, dry, dull-colored slab of wood with rusted hinges and a crooked doorknob. Throwing the rest of the suitcases carelessly to the side, I reach for the knob and twist, having to use my whole arm to get the knob to move. And as it does, the door pops forward for a moment before eerily creaking its way open. Looking down, all I can make out is a set of stairs that look like they might collapse with every step, plunging you into the void of darkness in the basement. Guess the luxury ends here. Pulling my phone out of my pocket, I turn on the flashlight, the beam of light penetrating the veil of darkness instantly. The white light reveals a medium-sized, concrete-walled room covered in cobwebs and at least 50 planks of wood, the kind you always smell before you see at appliance stores. I hunch my back and twist my hips at the waist, trying not to get stuck in the tiny door frame. As soon as my shoe hits the first plank of the stairs, I hear a loud creak echo through the silence. I'm also hit with a putrid stench, a cross between roadkill and stuffy, century-old air. Regardless, I push through, each stair wailing at me as I make my way down. The final step, I can move my flashlight around the right corner to see a workbench with various tools and nails on it. But I don't think you could set anything more on it before it collapses, because of course, its condition is highly subpar. I push my light further right and nearly drop it when the light makes out the decomposing body of someone. Their stomach has massive slashes in it, and they seem to be missing an arm, before I can even make out more of the figure on the ground. I bolt around and up the screaming stairs, not caring if one of them snapped. Once I'm back in the master bedroom, I can finally think rationally. Why did I run? Sure, there was a literal dead body down there, but there wasn't any present danger. But God, that was horrifying. I now know for sure. Nothing in that letter was a lie. This was probably one of the earlier victims of this evil entity, or whatever the hell it is. Regardless, I don't want to be ended in the same way they, or any of the others, met their demise. I make my way back down there to take stock of the materials, trying not to think about the rotted corpse's stench. After a very fast evaluation and knowing my time is limited, I make my way back up to the room and dump all of my belongings out of my massive travel bag and trek back to the basement to stock up on some very well-needed supplies. I stuff the bag with anything that looks like it can be used, from saws to small bolts. Anything will help. The planks were hard to fit in my bag, but I was luckily able to position them semi-vertical in a way that allowed me to lug them with me. completely convinced in my mind the extra weight is surely going to destroy one, if not all, of the planks. Luckily it doesn't, and I make it to the top and immediately begin working tirelessly, boarding any window I see, hastily slamming each nail and sawing each board to fit the right dimensions, making multiple trips back and forth for more supplies. Out of respect, I also grabbed the rug from the living room and covered the body in the basement. As little as it is, it's the best I can do for now. After around an hour and a half of tireless labor, I finally nailed the last board into place over the living room window. I'm not done working, however. I also go into the kitchen and grab all the knives I see, and place a few scattered around each room in case I need to grab one in a hurry, placing a smaller pocket knife into my shoe, just in case. Judging by the paper, it won't do much, but something is better than nothing. And right now, I need all the comfort I can get. After truly finishing my work, I grab the papers off the ground and continue to read, looking for the next thing I should do. It doesn't seem like there's anything more I need to do, other than plug up my phone, then sit and wait until it's time. Pacing around the living room, I find myself compulsively checking the time, counting down each minute, and it's been about 2 hours, so the game should be beginning at any moment, and lucky for me, it's nighttime. Just 46 more hours. I think to myself, not feeling any more at ease. A few more anxious minutes pass, and I hear a familiar sound. I hear those same inhuman cries coming from the front of the house. It sounds terrifyingly close this time, just past the tree line, if I had to guess. The game has begun. Almost instantly, I reach for the nearest knife and hold it tight, waiting for something to happen, although for at least a minute, there's nothing. But then the silence is broken by a loud slam on the front door. It makes me jump hard, but luckily I manage to keep myself quiet. Then comes another and another. The slamming on the door becomes more and more frantic and aggressive. The slamming became so hard I was certain the door would come down at any second. As I could see with each impact, the door shakes and trembles. Large impacts on thick wood became a ringing in my ears as the unrelenting slams continued. The sound of whatever this was, so desperately attempting to get in, puts fear so potent into my body, I can only put my back to a wall and slide down, pointing my knife toward the door, tears rolling down my face. Thankfully, after many agonizing moments, the pounding at the door pauses. I can hear a muffled, low growl come from outside before heavy footsteps tread off somewhere in the forest. Now I'm left on the floor, back to the wall in the fetal position, adrenaline coursing through every ounce of my being. Cops aren't going to save me. It's me against whatever this thing is. But what can I do other than wait this thing out? It's clear by the slamming on the door that this thing is far stronger than me or anybody I know. A knife isn't going to do anything to this thing. I sit there for a moment, racking my brain for any kind of solution that might give me an edge. Then I'm hit with a stroke of genius. There were taxidermied animal heads on the fireplace wall. There is a chance there could be a gun laying around here somewhere the note did not detail. And maybe if I'm lucky, ammo as well. Where to look? Think to myself, racking my head for ideas. Let's start with the closets, I say to myself, hoping there is at least something I can make use of. Now walking out of the master bedroom into the unnervingly quiet hallway, hearing every wooden board settle under my weight. I go to the closet to the right of the hall, and twist the knob, opening the door. I'm met with a veil of darkness. I look up and see a cord coming down from the ceiling, and pulling it gives light to the darkness, revealing something that fills me with unmatched hope. A box of .223 Remington rounds. This has got to be one of the best things I've seen in a long time. I scan the rest of the closet, and to my surprise, there is no gun of any kind. But I'm not worried. Where there is ammo, there is a gun. Hastily, I grab the ammo box, and I'm once again disappointed. The box feels very light. I pop open the flap of cardboard on the top, and to my horror, there are only 2 rounds in the box. I yell and throw the box at the wall, the rounds flying out and loudly clinking against the solid wood floor. Right at that moment, I realize my mistake, as I hear a shriek come from outside, followed by those same thumping footsteps. I hear the steps clamber onto the porch, followed by heavy scratching going down the front door. Soon after, this creature begins slowly walking around the perimeter of the house, going from the door toward the right of the house. Just when it sounds like it's going to pass the area outside in front of me, it stops for a moment. For a second, there is nothing but me in the silence of the hallway, hearing my heart thud against my chest rapidly. Then I hear the wood exterior of the house begin to splinter, the sound starting at ground level, but eventually it goes higher and higher until I hear the roof above me creak heavily, dust and settled cobwebs being knocked loose under the immense weight. It's climbed onto the house. Now paralyzed in fear, I stand in the middle of the hallway, watching the dust falling, getting closer and closer to where I'm standing. It isn't long until it's right above me, and just when I think the situation couldn't possibly get worse, the lights flicker and everything goes dark. Shit, this is not good. I need to reset the power box as soon as I can, but there's no way in hell I'm going out there with this thing literally right above me. Instead, I decided to take a very big risk, albeit still less risky than going outside. I take my phone out of my pocket and hit the flashlight icon. The rest of the hallway and part of the living room is instantly illuminated by the penetrating light. Before I can make a move, however, I hear a loud thud above me, followed by another and another as I'm showered by falling dust, and God knows what else. I don't have time to think before my legs jump into action, and I quickly make a mad dash to nowhere in particular, just anywhere away from here. So I scour the floor plan, quickly trying to find a suitable place to hide before this thing is all over me. Fireplace? No. Cabinets? No. Pantry? Yes. Instantly, I dash towards the double doors and swing them open and shut myself inside. Now in oppressive darkness, I can only look through the crack that separates the 2 doors and listen. Eventually, the slamming on the roof stopped, I guess. It was strong enough to hold, but the peaceful silence doesn't last long. I hear a piercing shriek, followed by thunderous footsteps going off of the roof, quickly followed by a hard shake as this thing hits ground level again. The pounding footsteps go all the way to the back of the house. For about a minute, I can hear this thing walking around and on the house, trying to find a way in, occasionally scratching and banging on different areas of the house. And for a long moment, there is a pause. No noise, no footsteps, nothing but me, the dark, and my booming heart. But after maybe 30 seconds of the loudest silence of my life, I hear a sound that makes my heart drop. I hear glass shatter. Quickly after this, I hear the unmistakable sound of wood planks splintering, and their hollow thuds bouncing off the wooden floor. Given the distance of the sound, I can assume it's somewhere. On the other side of the house, maybe the guest bedroom? Regardless, this thing has made its way into the house. There's nothing I can do now besides sit and pray it doesn't know where I'm at. After what feels like a lifetime passes, I hear another noise. It's more wood splintering, but this time it's at the master bedroom door. I peek through the tiny slit in the pantry door and try to see as much as I can, and through the deep darkness I can make out a faint orange glow, accompanied by a deep guttural growl somewhere down the hallway. Not long after, slow, heavy footsteps begin making their way closer to the living room. I can hear my heartbeat get heavier than it already was, hearing the boards creak and wail under the weight of whatever this thing was. Still looking through the slit with heavy anticipation, I watch as the faint orange glow gets brighter and brighter until the entire living room is casted in the warm color. It's just when I try to get a better look into the living room when my arm hits something on a shelf, knocking it over and sending it crashing to the ground with a sharp thud. Almost immediately, the orange glow snaps to the kitchen, accompanied by that same deep growl. If I hadn't already given myself away, my heartbeat surely would, as I could feel it pounding against my ribs, loud as a drum. I see the glow get brighter, and the thunderous footsteps get so close. I feel the vibration in the floor with each movement this thing made. And eventually, I see it. It's so unlike anything I've ever seen. Its body was huge, easily towering at 8 feet at the least. It seemed to have fur, soaked in tar, wrapped around its unusually muscular frame. It walked on all fours, its front, clawed arms much stronger than the smaller and shorter hind legs. Its head was of a worn deer skull, adorned with cracked and broken antlers. It's now when I realize where the orange glow was coming from. Looking into its eyes, I see 2 fiery, glowing orbs. Just then it slowly twists its head to me, the orbs illuminating me through the door. No doubt this thing saw me, but it didn't attack. It just released a deep guttural laugh, turned, and left on the same path it had entered. Once I hear the pounding steps leave into the tree line, I slide down the wall of the pantry and just sit there, still trying to make sense of everything. Even though I'd heard the pounding on the front door, seen the body in the basement, and now even having seen the creature, it was all so hard to believe. None of this was grounded in reality anymore. After a few moments of baffled thought, I finally remembered. The power's out. I needed to go outside and reset the power box before that thing came back, because if it does, I don't think it'll be here to toy with me again. So, I managed to bring myself to my feet and exit the pantry, turning on my flashlight, the vision of the house's kitchen coming quickly into view. I began walking to the back door past the kitchen. Luckily, it had a glass top, so I could look into the backyard for a moment to ensure I didn't see even the slightest orange glow. After grabbing the doorknob and hesitating for a moment, I throw the door open and begin sprinting across the large, unusually kept lawn. It's hard to tell with just my flashlight, but it seems like there is a large metal box with wiring strewn about, and I'm willing to bet that's the power box. After making it across the large backyard, I go into the tree line, right up to the metal-plated box. For a moment I don't see anything, just the smooth gray surface of metal. I looked around the box quickly, seeing a blue button on the back of the box that read, Reset. Instantly I mash the button, which causes the box to make a loud pop before humming to life. Across the lawn I can see the warm orange glow of the house's lights. It's such a relieving sight that I almost didn't notice the pair of orange eyes on the roof, piercing through the night, looking at me. Instantly my body locks in place, ice encapsulating every inch of my skin. Though it's nighttime and dark, I can still make out the large, muscular build of this creature. Large, heaving breaths, exiting in a thin smoke through the nostrils of the deer skull. For what felt like ages, neither of us made a move. I felt like I was staring at this thing for so long, I had thought maybe it hadn't seen me. Maybe it was just curious about the noise the power box made. Maybe I was right, or maybe I had been blessed. But either way, the beast made one last deep growl in my direction, before sluggishly disappearing behind the other half of the house's roof, disappearing into the deep inky night. The moment I can no longer hear the thunderous footsteps, my legs kick into gear and begin throwing me across the yard to the house. I make it inside, slamming and locking the door behind me in a frantic panic. I have to fix that window, I think to myself. I hated having to go into that basement, but this was survival, and so I did, getting the boards I needed and hastily fixing the window, and as I'm fixing it, I see the smallest amount of light start to peek over the mountaintop, signaling hope and a reprieve. I've made it through the first night. As I'm leaving the guest bedroom after boarding the window, I turn to close the door behind me. But I see something strange under the bed, some kind of cloth. I go towards it and kneel down, pulling a dark green strap. And as I pull my arm back, I'm blessed with the sight of a bolt-action rifle. It's old and dusty, but it seems like it was stable enough to shoot. I spent what little time was left of the night to take apart and clean the weapon, as best as I could. Anyway, when I'm done, I load the 2 rounds into it and push the bolt forward, making it ready to fire. I hadn't noticed, but outside, I could hear the faint sounds of birds chirping. Glancing out of the window, I could see faint slits of blue through the wood boards. Hopefully this thing will back off a little with it being daytime now. I take my phone out of my pocket and see that it's 9 in the morning. 1 hour until I can finally sleep safely. Even if it's just a few hours, it's enough to keep me alert. Though time seems to go by at a crawling pace. I was mostly hoping this creature wouldn't try some last trick on me before letting me get some shut-eye. And to my surprise, nothing happened. So when 10 o'clock struck, I immediately set an alarm so I didn't oversleep, and promptly passed out on the couch. It almost feels like no time passes before a loud crash sends me flying to my feet, chest heaving, and my senses clocking into overdrive as I try to gather my surroundings. At first I see and hear nothing, but my skin feels slightly cold, and the air around me seems cleaner in a way. As my eyes adjust, I can see a faint glow of moonlight casted on a forest of large pine trees. I'm somewhere in the mountains, no doubt. But how? I vividly remember collapsing onto the couch. Just then, something breaks the silence. I hear a sound I'm very familiar with. A loud thud shakes the earth beneath my feet, as multiple twigs snap just a few yards away. My blood runs cold as I slowly turn around, and sure enough, my gaze meets that same creature that has been haunting me these past few hours, a mere 10 feet away. Its entire body is ink black. That same tar-like substance matting its fur glows under the moonlight, with the only other light being the fiery orange glow of its dead eyes. The beast is staring daggers right through me. A thin mist escapes from under the deer's skull with each heaving breath it makes. Then the creature leaps toward me, its huge arms fully extended outward. Then my eyes fly open, and I'm back in the cabin. For a moment, everything is still. The air is warm, and I can hear a cacophony of birds chirping amongst themselves. Despite the terrifying nature of the dream I just had, I'm surprisingly calm. I flip my phone over and check the time, 11:59. Well, that couldn't have been timed better, I think to myself, bringing myself to my feet. It wasn't a long sleep by any means. I'm definitely still tired, but it's manageable. I'll be able to make it to the next break. For a while, nothing happens. I've searched the whole house multiple times, overlooking for anything else of use, but nothing is uncovered. It feels as though I'm just on a regular vacation sometimes. Nothing happens for 30 minutes to an hour, and everything feels normal. I can hear the birds outside, the random call of the mountain animals, even the occasional plane overhead. I can see the morning light shining through the small cracks in between the boards on the windows. It's oddly calming considering the situation. Maybe I'm just happy it's not night, and one day closer to making it out of this hell. Around 40 more minutes pass with nothing, deafening silence only broken by the occasional settling of the house that sends me flying to my feet each time. I've noticed I'm so much more jumpy now, for good reason, of course. For so long the silence dragged on, despite being so on edge. The lack of any stimulation eventually reached me, and I began to feel my eyes grow heavier as time passed. And so I began to pace around the house to make sure I didn't pass out. I also decided to go into the master bedroom bathroom to see if there could be anything of use. But despite looking to the best of my ability, I can't seem to find anything. I figure even though I've looked already, if I keep searching the rest of the house, I might find something. So I leave the bathroom and open the door to enter the hallway, where I'm stopped dead in my tracks. Right there at the entrance of the hallway stood the beast, with the corpse from the basement hanging lifeless in its jaws. And right behind, it was the bolt-action rifle, my only hope, leaning on the living room couch, right where I'd left it. How could it have made it inside without making a noise? How did it even get to the corpse? I don't have time to think about the reality of the situation as the beast releases its jaws, dropping the body to the floor with a solid thud. Massive tooth marks sunken deep into its rotted flesh. I should have ran, hidden, closed the door, anything. But I just couldn't bring myself to move. I could only sit still and stare at the creature, a mix of blood and saliva dripping from its gaping maw. Finally, fully realizing the horror of the sight in front of me, I snap into action, slamming the door and bolting to the closet to hide in the basement. Maybe I'll be lucky, and it won't fit past the trap door. Frantically, I swung into the closet, running to the trap door. I make it to the tiny dried wood door and try to swing it open, but it doesn't budge. I pull again, harder this time, but it doesn't move an inch. Now the creature is at the room door, and I can hear it slam its fist into it as the sound of wood splintering cracks through the air. Now I begin frantically pulling on the door, trying desperately to get it open, but it simply will not budge. A second impact rocks the door. This time I hear it tear off the hinges and crash to the floor. In a desperate panic, I lean back and begin, slamming my heel into the door as a last-ditch attempt. And finally, the door splinters and pops open. Just as it does, however, the closet is illuminated in the same orange glow I'd seen so many times before. I try to throw myself down into the darkness of the basement, but I'm too late. Just as I leap, I feel the creature's massive hand grab my body tightly and pull me backwards. Its hand is so massive it wraps around my entire chest, so tight I can't draw a breath. And as it turns me around, I'm face to face with the beast that is about to kill me. But for a moment it just holds me there, turning me side to side, examining me, tightening its grip so hard I feel my ribs begin to cave inward, threatening to snap at any moment. The pain is blinding, and I can feel myself about to pass out from the lack of oxygen. Just as the darkness reaches the edges of my eyes, just as I feel my bones giving out from the immense pressure, an epiphany hits me. I remembered so many hours ago I had put a knife into my shoe. With time limited and my life on the line, I lift my leg up and grab the knife out of my shoe, holding it high in the air above the beast. I see it tilt its head upwards, seeing what I'm doing. Before it can do anything, I plunge the knife deep into its right eye. The creature lets out a shrill shriek and drops me to the ground, its hand clawing at the knife, still plunged handle deep into its socket. The beast looks up to me, still on the ground, ears ringing, trying to catch my breath. It releases a guttural roar that resonates pure hate. Just then its eye releases a bright flash before a hard shockwave sends me flying backwards, directly into the basement. The first thing I feel is an intense pulsating pain in my head. I can feel a cold sensation on my body and something wet on my face. I move my arms to pick myself up, and I feel a cold, smooth surface that feels like it has a layer of either dirt or dust. As my senses begin slowly coming back to me, I notice I'm surrounded by darkness, and I'd assume it was silent, but the ringing in my ears makes it hard to tell. For a moment I can't make sense of anything. With the intense head pain and ringing ears, my mind is too clouded to think clearly. It's then I begin looking around where I'm at, stumbling, trying to keep from falling over, as it feels like my head is spinning. At first it's the same darkness in all directions, but I eventually see a small light. Focusing my eyes, I can tell. It's a small doorway with a warm yellow light flooding through the darkness. Looking down at my feet, I can see a puddle of what seems to be water. But upon closer inspection, I can notice a slight red hue to it. To confirm my suspicions, I lift my hand to the back of my head, and sure enough, I feel a warm, slimy sensation. And when I pull my hand back, it's covered in blood. Just then, all the dots connect, and it hits me. The cabin, the creature, the basement. I can now remember how I got here, and the events that transpired. What had I done? What was that flash after I injured the creature? Did it actually hurt it? Is it over? So many questions flood my aching head. It's too much. I have to sit down and close my eyes for a moment. The small light from the doorway was making my head pulsate with even more waves of agonizing pain. I take my phone out of my pocket and turn on the flashlight, making sure to squint eyes so the light doesn't unleash another barrage of aching pains in my head. I turn the light to my left and I see a ripped and tattered mat where I had left the body. It just doesn't make sense to me. How could that thing make it down here? But then again, how has this thing doing anything it's been doing? How the hell is this thing even real? I finally have enough of my bearings to pick myself up off the floor, approaching the stairs and ascending up, the familiar sound of old wood crying out all the way, and at the top my heart drops for a moment as I see the beast at the closet door. But it's not the foreboding monster it once was. Now it's slumped on the ground, its arms sprawled, and its jaw hung open, a large black tongue resting on the carpet, and where bright orange orbs once were now two black holes in the deer's skull. Cautiously I walk to the massive corpse, kicking its head as I reach it, confirming its death. There's no celebration, no confetti or party. I don't jump or yell. I simply look at the body on the ground and make my way to the front door. Stepping outside, I see it's now noon, with the sun settling just under the mountain tops. I sit on the porch for a moment, just taking it all in, happy to be alive. Woozy, but lucid. I think I'm gonna stick to hotels from now on, I say to myself, glad to see a sunset, even if it's just one more time. Story number 2. What happens when you die? Centuries have been spent arguing and convincing others the truth. I don't know if I have everyone's answer, but I have my truth. With every death, before came life. My name is Emma. I'm 22 years old, and for the first time, I finally felt like life was starting to make sense. I just moved out of my parents' house into a small but cozy apartment with my boyfriend, Ryan. We lived each day one step closer to a life we hadn't even lived yet, but enjoyed the journey. I worked part-time at a coffee shop while finishing school to become a child psychologist. I could see the finish line, our wedding day, our first little house, and the German shepherd we promised each other once we had a yard. I could almost hear the bark echoing through the hallways of a life we hadn't built yet. Everything was clear, but I never saw the car that ran the red light. I remember the screeching of tires and smell of iron as my perfect little world went dark. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed, the dull beep of the monitor confirming to me my heartbeat was still present. My body was wrong, dead weight, limp, a sack of wet sand refusing to obey. I'm sure my eyes were open, but I could only see in splotches and light. The attempt to speak was futile. I moved my tongue around my mouth and noticed I had lost all my teeth. Toothless gums replaced my smile. I had worked so hard and withstood years of braces, only to have them ripped away from me. My hearing was dulled, almost like I was underwater. I could feel the presence of people around me. I heard the creak of a door open, and someone began to speak. Nous sommes à la fin d'un très long parcours. Was that French? I took 3 years in high school. I didn't understand all of it, but I heard Finn. The end. I wasn't sure, but the tone said more than the words ever could. Why were they speaking French? I don't think anyone from my family spoke French. We were as Irish as potatoes and whiskey. I felt a pressure on my hand as a dip of water landed on my cheek. On sera vera, Papa. A hushed, sniffled voice spoke in my ear. Papa, I tried to look past the blur, but I couldn't see anything in detail. I was basically blind. I just heard the faint weeping of several around me. As another pressure began on my other hand, I sat like that for what felt like an eternity, not able to move or speak or understand truly what was happening around me. I focused on my breathing. It was slow and labored. The beeping slowed. The world faded. I sat behind a desk as the rising sun crept through the high-rise windows. The dystopian cityscape outside was unlike anything I had seen. I grew up in small-town Vermont. I was used to small brick buildings and colonial-style houses. This was a metropolis newer than New York, gleaming and sharp. On the desk sat a nameplate, written in a language I couldn't read. My eyes dropped to my body. A tailored business blouse. This wasn't me. This wasn't my body. My hands were pristine, coated in a red polish on the nails, breasts larger than my own. This wasn't me. My body felt fake, stiff as if even my smile had been manufactured. I pressed closer to the window and realized I was hundreds of stories up. My reflection stared back, beautiful, meticulously mutilated into perfection. Panic surged through me. What was happening? Where was I? Who am I? My breathing boiled until it broke into hyperventilation. I threw myself at the glass. It didn't break, but knocked the air from my chest. I ran. I ran out of the office and down the hall. I had many people shouting at me, perhaps out of concern. I couldn't understand a word. I ran and saw an open door that led to a balcony. There were people out there talking and filling the air with smoke and conversation which I could not be a part of. Some of them stopped and gave me a raised eyebrow. I could only let out a nervous laugh. Several people walked up to me, gently laying their hand on me, talking hushed and calm. I just wanted to wake up. This dream had gone on enough. I took a deep breath and put myself together. The people took a step back and let out a nervous laugh. Once they didn't seem as alert, I darted to the edge. I leapt, the ground so far away. The screams of those around me became a distant hum as the air around my free fall deafened me. It was time to try something. Maybe I can make this a lucid dream. I thought about flying, flapping my arms, in desperation to take flight. All efforts were futile. I sank through the sky like an anchor. All time to reflect on what was happening passed by in a flash as the earth welcomed me with its solid embrace. A sharp migraine pulsed through my skull. Machinery roared around me, men shouting over the chaos. Sunlight blazed down, so bright. It felt like a slap after the darkness I'd just left. Slowly the world came into focus. The acrid mix of sweat and tar stung my nose. I raised a hand to cover my face and froze. Black-stained leather gloves. I tugged one off. A swollen, hairy hand stared back at me. My arm was thick, darkened by sun and ink, muscles corded where pale skin once was. A bold tattoo stretched across the forearm. Olivia. Who was Olivia? Why was I hairy, muscular? This has to be a dream. I thought. I'll wake up any second. Around me, men worked the road, some smoking, some eating their lunches. It was too ordinary, too real. Desperate, I pinched myself. Pain flared, panic set in. My chest heaved. My breaths rasped. A man noticed and jogged over. "Hey, Danny, the hell's wrong with you?" "Danny?" My voice came out deeper, alien. "No, I'm Emma. Where am I?" He frowned, then chuckled uneasily, peering into my eyes. "What the fuck? You having a heat stroke or something, buddy?" My heart was about to explode out of my chest. I had to wake up any means necessary. I spun my head and saw what could. Get the job done. A bit brutal, but it was the first thing I saw. A steamroller. I stepped away from the man and ran full speed ahead. It rolled slowly and I acted fast. Some men started to yell. I'm sure they didn't know what I was planning. I slid, trying to jam myself under the giant wheel. I managed to get my right arm and shoulder wedged. As the flattener crawled forward, I felt the evisceration of bone as it turned to dust. It felt like my body was being engulfed in the presence of the sun. I could hear the screams of men as the machine hissed. It slowly rolled an inch and pressed onto my skull, which caved quickly, cracking like a walnut shell. Dust and sand filled my eyes as the ricocheting of bullets whizzed past. The buildings around me were sheet metal. The streets around me were drenched in blood and bodies. I heard shouts to my left. My ears were ringing. I had a gun in my hands. Not my hands. I cried. I couldn't take this. I had the easiest way to end it right in my palms, but I couldn't. Too much was happening so fast. I heard shots, very close. The door to the room I was sitting in was kicked open. I threw my hands up. I gasped as my hands were still in front of me. They were so small, pudgy little fingers. I was a child, toddler perhaps. The gunfire was gone. The only noise was the ambient sound of the ceiling fan. I laid my head back on a little lamb-stuffed animal. I attempted to move my legs. I could, but they were weak. I don't think they could hold me up. I wasn't just a toddler. I was a baby. I might as well act the part. I bawled my eyes out, screaming at the top of my little lungs. Soon, a woman walked into the room, plump, unkempt, red hair. "Who, my little one? Come here." She spoke in a soothing British accent. She picked me up and started to rock me. It calmed me. I collected my thoughts. What was I supposed to do? The idea this was a dream started to fade. She hummed and rubbed my back. But I wasn't going to just go to sleep. I needed answers. I tried my best to talk. It didn't come naturally, like speaking through taffy. Even if I could talk, what would I say? I looked around my environment. Statues and paintings of Jesus and the Virgin Mary surrounded me. The room was charming. Stacks of envelopes covered kitchen table. Among the religious imagery was several photos of a man. Thinning hair and a bushy mustache. Square, thin-framed glasses sat. There were a couple photos of the lady, and him sat on a mantel, a wooden sign with the words, "Forever in my heart, in the arms of the Lord," carved and painted into it. "You see, Daddy?" She noticed my glare and stepped to the picture. I struggled to speak as my muscles were underdeveloped. Like a stroke, victim attempting communication. I knew what I wanted to say, but my mouth made me struggle. Would her precious child's first words be a plea for help? I could only stay here for so long. I can't wait to grow. My life's experience crammed into this fresh spawn. The moving of my mouth and tongue took surgical precision. The mother took notice and awed in glee with the anticipation of the long-awaited voice of their child. Gargles and gasps left my little mouth in a struggled desperation to be heard. She gawked with glee, guiding my attempts to Mama or Papa. He, I could do this. Walking on undeveloped muscles would be nearly impossible, but talking, I could make this work. I pushed out the beginning, but the rolling of the L was a struggle. The poor mother began to speak with me. Hello. Hello. Her smile was almost ripping. She couldn't possibly smile any wider. I stopped my attempts and went quiet. She was still smiling, but it began to shrink. The warmth never left her eyes. You've got so much to say, don't? Yeah. She looked at me with only the love of a mother could give to a child. The mother carried me to a crib, a wonderful hand-carved wooden frame. A quaint, small cross carved into the head of it and covered in a soft, powdered blue paint. I couldn't do much besides look up. She gave me a kiss on the crown of my head. The mother left me in the room, not before spinning a music box and leaving the sweet, crackling sound, left in the isolation of my squishy, weak body, left to ponder what my world had become. Yesterday I was in the midst of bliss. The blur of the accident was still present. I'm cognizant enough to remember, but the hospital, the skyscraper, road construction, trying to make sense of this hodgepodge of consciousness. Speech did not come naturally, but I had my goal. I spent the night fighting my vocals, but I was making progress. The night had dragged like a fever dream. I wrestled with the mush of my throat and tongue, shaping noises, learning how to steer the muscles like oars through syrup, coaxing vowels to shape. Every grunt, every accidental syllable was progress. My mind was aflame with clarity, but my body was still a cage. When she came to me again, arms smelling faintly of lavender soap and stale coffee, her face beamed with expectation. She brushed a curl of red hair behind her ear and whispered in her soft, British lilt, "Come on then, my sweet boy. Let Mama hear you. Say a word for me." I tried. Air hissed and stuttered out of me, a wet gargle, but I pressed harder. "Ma." Her eyes shone. Yes, yes, clever lad." I shook my head, weakly, furious at the misinterpretation. Again I forced the sound out, this time dragging my vocal cords like knives across stone. Ma. No. Help." Her smile faltered. She blinked at me, uncomprehending until the syllables stacked on top of each other, crude but clear. You baby." She froze. The joy drained from her face in an instant. Her arms stiffened around me, as though I had turned to ice in her grasp. I pressed on, desperate to make her understand. No baby. Emma. Each word came jagged, broken, stitched together by sheer will. I could hear how wrong it sounded, like a drunkard's confession slurred through rotten teeth. But the truth was there, naked and damning. Her lips quivered. She backed away from me, clutching me to her chest, not out of love, but like someone holding a venomous serpent. No, that's not. My boy can't. Her eyes darted to the mantel where her husband's photograph sat beneath the wooden sign. "This is a trick, a wicked trick," I sobbed, coughing against the effort, but I forced the words again. Accident, car, light, hospital, fan, no dead," she shrieked, dropping me back into the crib. Her hands clutched her temples, as though the words themselves were nails being driven into her skull. "Stop. Stop it. Don't you say those things. Not in my house, not in front of the Lord." Her gaze snapped back to me, and for the first time, the love in her eyes was gone. In its place, raw terror, fevered conviction. She saw not her child, but an intruder wearing his skin. "You're not him. You're not my baby. You're the devil himself, crawling in through the mouth of an innocent," I cried out again, begging through gasps. "No devil, me. Emma, please, help me, please." Her body shook with sobs, her hands wringing at her nightgown until the seams nearly tore. Then something hardened in her, a grim resolve, twisting her grief into madness. She staggered toward the crib, whispering as though in prayer, "I won't let you have him. I won't let you take my sweet boy. Better the Lord have him than you," I screamed, voice breaking into a desperate litany of truth. No baby. Car crash. Emma. No devil, no devil, no." The pillow came down, blotting out my vision. The smell of stale linen filled my lungs as her weight pressed down. My tiny fists beat helplessly against the suffocating fabric. Every word I'd fought to claw from this body smothered back into silence. Above me, I heard her, sobbing, prayers, fractured and wild. "Forgive me, Lord, forgive me. Take him home, take him home." The music box still played on the dresser, its tinny crackling notes winding down, note by note, until there was nothing left but darkness. I sat at a kitchen table, surrounded by people, a woman and 2 children, a young girl probably around 5, and a boy about 9. The little girl sat in braids. Her gapped smile widened as she took a large bite of her food. The boy wore jersey. I think it's a Denver Broncos jersey. I must be in America then. "Todd, are you okay, dear? You look a bit pale," the woman said with a look of worry on her face. "He must have wanted pizza, too." "Huh, Dad?" The boy spoke, with a rowdiness only achievable by someone his age. "I love the macaroni," said the girl, smiling so bright. "Yeah, of course you do. That's all you ever eat," exclaimed the boy. Their bickering continued. I scooted my chair back. "I've got to go to the bathroom." I went to excuse myself. I don't know where the bathroom is. This was a different panic, not one of desperation to use it, but that if this is my house, I should know where it is. I tried to look as confident as I could, cautiously looking down the hallway to see if I could spot it out if I had to open door. Unfortunately, I had to play the guessing game. I tried the first on the left. That must have been the boys. A bunch of sports memorabilia and posters of players hung on his walls. I closed and tried the next. Thank God. I locked myself in the room. I looked in the mirror, in disbelief and disgust. I was a man, late 30s or early 40s. I had a small gut and stood about 6 foot. I had glasses and a short-trimmed beard, My hair was covered by a cap. I stared at the logo on it. I have no clue what team that is. I sat on the toilet, trying to wrap my head around any of this. I checked my pockets and found a wallet and my phone. His name is Todd. He's 39 years old. He's from Colorado. So I know the bare minimum of information about him or me. I don't know the kids' names. I don't know the wife's. I pulled his phone out. No Face ID. I don't know the password. How do I fake any of this? I'm not Todd, father of two. I'm Emma. How is any of this possible? What is happening? Am I dreaming? I remember I was driving. Did I got into an accident? I know. Maybe I'm in a coma. Just a long sleep. As I gaze into the face of this middle-aged man. Every movement uncanny as the reflection of this man. Mirrored every single action. Of course it was mirrored. It was me, after all. The adrenaline began to subside as I finally felt a form of calm. I took a long, good look at myself. Relatively in shape, balding on top. The crease of my eyes had lines beginning to form. A subtle engraving of smile marks on my cheeks. The misery that came with the realization brought me to tears. Was I any more than a puppeteer? The man I am has so many happy memories with a family that adores him, and I hijack it and take over, left destitute in the prison of my own conscience, locked in the body of someone new. And what's left for Todd? Is he snuffed out of existence just like that? Or is he forced to rot in the recesses of his mind as I take his body for a joy ride? I have no love for his wife or kids. Love isn't something you can fake, at least not to this level. I began to heave as the stress came back full force. You all right, honey? A sweetness laced her voice as to mask the concern. Yeah. Just an upset stomach. I'll be back in a moment. The dread of communication with this family was foreboding. They weren't monsters nor creatures of the night, but simply a family. One that loved, laughed, and cared for each other. Deep-rooted, grounded in a town I didn't know. Past experiences and core memories erased from this vessel. I wanted to be dreaming, but the realness, the detail, and clarity in my surroundings made me come to terms with this being something else entirely. I couldn't hide forever. I would have to confront them and act as best I could. But how could I act like someone who I've never met, let alone heard of? Was he witty? Quiet? Loud and proud? I would have to see how it all played out. I cleaned myself up and took a deep breath and stepped back into the dining room. Pictures of Christmases past and presumed relatives lined the wall, as the children sat with their plates almost empty, their laughter filling the room in a twist of jolly bursts and giggles, a goal I had wished to achieve. A happy, healthy family, enjoying time together. The pit in my stomach twisted with the ravenous gnaw of a stray dog. The room filled with joy, my heart shattered in the wake. I was a thief of happiness, a thief of life. My ears rang from the conversations around me like I had just landed on Normandy. I muted everything around me as I stared at the family portrait that hung over the doorway of the dining rooms. The face of the man was staring back at me. Todd. The shrilled screech cut through my haze. I darted my head to the source, the wife. Honey, where is your mind? Your son is trying to talk to you. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost, Daddy. The little girl looked up at me with fear. I can assume I was pale. I felt the sweat running down my forehead. When not fixated on the photo, my eyes darted around like cornered prey. "I'm okay. Sweetie, I'm sorry Daddy just isn't feeling good." I showed a soft smile to her. I wiped the sweat from my brow. "Sorry, guys. I'm gonna go lay down." I just had to get away. I needed answers. "I'm all groggy, babe. What's my phone password?" I just needed to get into my phone and I could find something. "What? It's our anniversary year, isn't it?" She raised a brow at me, perhaps thinking I changed it for some reason. I didn't say anything. I sat looking back and forth. "We just had our 10-year. Todd, are you okay? Seriously, you're scaring me." She started to get visibly upset. The tension in the room was suffocating. The kids were hushed, looking at their parents, nearly as confused as I was. I fumbled for words and haphazardly abandoned my seat at the table, heading back to the bathroom. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and typed in 2015. Unlocked. I let out a sigh of relief. Who do I call? The decision was daunting. I could call Ryan, but what do I say? "Hey Ryan, it's Emma. I know I sound like I'm a grown man. That's because I am. But it's still me. Love you so much." Who was I kidding? That would be a nightmare. Maybe it would be the ultimate test of if personality prevails. I could try my parents. If I know what only I could know, maybe I could convince them. I tried what made sense in the moment. I called my cell phone. It didn't even ring. Straight to voicemail. I heard my voice. "Hey, this is Emma. Sorry I missed your call. I'll call back soon. Bye." My voice, full of energy. I missed it. I hung up and held back tears the best I could. I should have slowed down, but everything, every death, the last breath of a life to the first, as someone knew, was one continuous line of consciousness for me. I didn't have time to reflect. I took a deep breath in. I'll call my dad. My fingers rattled as I put his number in. With an exhale, I called. The rings crawled its way from the phone and echoed in my ear. Anxiety flooded through my bloodstream. I couldn't do this. A hollow voice came through the speaker. "Hello?" my father forced out. Tears welled in my eyes. "Hey, Scott," I managed to squeak. "Who is this?" His voice was thin, confused. The rest of my life hinged on a few words, but they stuck like stone in my throat. If I couldn't say it, maybe I could ask instead. "Emma? How's she doing?" I already knew the answer. I'd killed myself a handful of times today, stumbling between lives, sitting now in the purgatory of suburbia. I just needed to hear it. Dead. My baby girl is dead. His voice broke and he wept. I wanted to comfort him, tell him I was here. "It's your ember," I cried. "Your little light." "What did you say?" His sobs faltered. Realization crept in. "It's me, Dad. I know it sounds crazy, but you rotten son of a bitch. What kind of sick game is this?" His grief twisted to venom. "No, I hope one day you feel the loss I feel, and when you do, I'll call you up and laugh in your face. You fucking prick." The line went dead. The silence pressed heavier than his words. I had lost something. No, everything. My family, my love, my future, my life. All I could do now was watch from the sidelines. The next couple days were spent as a chameleon. Good or bad, I couldn't really tell. The kids acted like they were talking to a stranger. I guess they were. The wife seemed suspicious as well. obviously, but luckily she didn't push too much. I had to call in to work. Seems as though Todd was a biomechanical engineer at a nearby hospital. I had to play sick, but not too sick, to be sent to his place of employment. I spent those days reminiscing and digging. Marketing executive dies in apparent fall from Seoul high-rise. Seoul, South Korea. A senior business executive died. Tuesday morning, the victim, a chief marketing officer, CMO, for a multinational corporation, name redacted, had reportedly been acting normally throughout the day before a sudden, unexplained outburst. Witnesses say she began sprinting erratically through the office space before running toward a balcony and leaping from an upper floor. Colleagues told investigators that she had shown no clear warning signs of distress prior to the episode. Police have stated that foul play is not suspected and are treating the case as an apparent suicide, though the sudden nature of her behavior has raised questions. In a brief statement, the company expressed condolences. "We are deeply saddened by this tragic event. Our thoughts are with the family, friends, and colleagues during this difficult time. Worker dies in rural construction accident. Alberta, Canada. A construction worker was killed Tuesday afternoon in a tragic accident at a rural work site, according to local authorities. Witnesses said the man had been working without issue before suddenly breaking from his task and moving into the path of a steamroller. Despite immediate emergency response, he was pronounced dead at the scene." The Royal Canadian Mounted Police confirmed the incident and stated that foul play is not suspected. Investigators are reviewing safety conditions at the site and interviewing co-workers to determine the circumstances leading up to the accident. Mother in Bakewell hospitalized after postpartum episode. Bakewell, England. Local authorities confirmed that a single mother in Bakewell was taken into care this week following a severe postpartum stress episode. Perpetrator states she became convinced her 20-month-old child was possessed. She had contacted authorities after taking the life of the infant. The woman was transported to a nearby hospital for evaluation and is receiving ongoing medical and psychiatric support. Health officials note that postpartum stress and related conditions remain a serious concern for new parents. Resources and support services are available for families across Derbyshire. There it all was, my actions written into harsh new articles. The theories were wrong. It was me. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Todd had 39 years of memories, experiences, life, and I just came in and hijacked it. I don't know anything about his wife, anything about our kids. I can only fake it for so long, until I don't know, but I can't kill him. It's ruining a family. It took me too long to realize that I killed somebody's child. I killed somebody who worked their whole life to get to the position that they're in, devastated, and their family. Killed a hard-working man, potentially had family, that wonder why he ended up doing what he did. And I took away the ability for a father to hear his family weep and tell them that it's okay for him to move on. I didn't ask for any of this. God knows I didn't want to do this either. I don't know why I'm in this situation that I'm in. I don't know what I can do to convince my family that I'm me without sounding like a crazy stalker. I could keep going, find someone similar enough. To me, reach out to Ryan and continue my life. How many lives and families would I ruin in the process? It's not worth it. Help me, if anyone is in the same situation as me. Please help me. I'm stuck in the purgatory of middle-class family, in a life I didn't design, with a family who loves me that I do not know. Am a monster for what I've done. What did I do to serve this in the first place? I'd rather be dead and gone than this shell of a life. Please help me. Story number 3. The cottage I live in sits in a small clearing, surrounded by large, old trees. They're the kind that are so big your hands wouldn't touch if you were somehow able to duplicate yourself and hug it from opposite sides. I love them. They're my sentinels, silent, rigid bodies reaching high into the sky, with a countless number of branching, thinning arms, patient observers standing tall against anything thrown at them. Wind, thunder, torrential downpours. In the dusk, they send long black shadows running along the ground, and in the early morning, dappled light breaks through the gaps between their leaves. The cottage is a small, one-story house. The only bathroom connects to my bedroom. The kitchen is spacious enough and has a walk-in pantry, and there's 2 rooms, one along the hall and one at the end of it. I use the one at the end of the hall as an office of sorts. The other holds a couch, a TV, though there isn't much, signal out here, and a load of still-packed boxes from my initial move. It's been years at this point, and I've started using them as stands instead of unpacking them. Next to the kitchen is a screen door that leads out into an area that's been fenced off. The wire and poles are rusted, but they still stand, and so I haven't bothered to replace them. It was meant to be a garden, but when I bought this place, the area had been overgrown. More jungle than a place to grow fruits and vegetables. The first thing I planted after I weeded and cut and tilled the dirt were tomatoes. A row of them along the fence. Now I regret planting so many. Every year more tomatoes that I know what to do with ripen. I try not to let them fall off and rot. I've thought about selling them. Next I planted a few blueberry plants, and under them strawberries. The strawberries never really took, but they do make flowers every year despite not bearing fruit. They're cute little things. Kind of looks like an egg in a frying pan. White petals ringing out a bright yellow center. The blueberries are plentiful as well, though I love blueberries, and so the sometimes bloated harvests never go to waste. I make preserves and the blueberries into recipes I look up online. I could eat them in any form forever. I planted a peach tree and a pecan tree, but neither are big enough to be productive. The peach tries to make peaches, but they always come out small and lumpy. I eat them, but there's never enough to really do anything with them. I've always wanted to live somewhere that's quiet. You could argue that the middle of nowhere is hardly quiet, and you'd be right. Crickets sing and cicadas cry. The air is constantly buzzing with the voices of living things, but it's the kind of loud that soothes me. It's peaceful, it's relaxing, or it was, for a little while. There is a slight catch to all the comfort. Part of the universe's mechanics is that everything is trying to find equilibrium. Everything wants to even out into neutrality. All that peace and quiet is balanced out by a little bit of chaos that rears its head every so often. I noticed the energy that seemed to crackle in the air when the real estate agent took me on a tour of the surrounding land and then the house. I didn't think anything of it. That was my mistake. Despite this place's little quirk, I wouldn't choose to live anywhere else. I enjoy the solitude, the fresh air. I can sit on my paw in the morning and listen to birdsong. However, that does not mean that I am never annoyed at my circumstances. Case and point, last night, and the events from this morning. A light show, a sign that a rift is opening up. Flashed behind the dark pillars of trees, it changed from mint to hot pink to midnight, then egg yolk, then fascia, and finally to pulsing lilac. This happens often enough that I threw a pillow over my eyes and ignored it. I knew what was coming, what this all meant, but I couldn't be bothered. As I drifted back off to sleep, I heard the crackle of energy and high-pitched zing of the rift closing once more. I really wish I hadn't ignored the lights, because it was Shaya who came stumbling through that portal. Shaya, the big boss, the one that Orin and Dryle report to, the one that no one can look at directly. She was used to getting her way, and she acted like it. I don't like surprises. It's my preference to greet whoever enters after the light show. That way I can get a look at them and prepare myself for their appearance. Orin is the easiest to look at. He's the most human-like, though I'm never not aware of the fact that he has 7 fingers on each hand, and a mouth that stretches all the way up to his temples. If he were to open his mouth all the way, his face hinges upward like a chute cover. The rest don't have appearances that are easy to accept. They look familiar but wrong. I see them often enough that I can usually suppress the instinctual jolt that laying my eyes on them always brings around. There's something about Shaya, though, that overrides my efforts. I flinch when her gaze flicks over to me, and I can't hold eye contact. She is the one thing that I would prefer to only ever have to see once as the second best alternative, to never at all. I couldn't be given even that much. I awoke to the sound of muffled movement. Remembering the lights from the night before, I didn't bother to get dressed as I hauled myself out of bed and draped a blanket over my shoulders. Walking into the kitchen, Shaya's form was hidden behind the open fridge door. I looked away when it smacked shut. I didn't think about how she got in. I stopped trying to ask her years ago. Shaya had her ways. That was as much as I could get out of her. I didn't really understand them. I don't think I was ever meant to. After all, she's not of this world. She's not even of this universe. None of the travelers that come from the light are. You're out of milk, Shaya said. Her voice was deep and resonant, lower than any baritone that I've ever heard. It was the kind of sound which rattled through you and settled in your ribs like a second heartbeat. The silence that followed was filled with the resonation of her voice. I knew her mouth didn't move as she spoke. Instead, it floated up from the slits lining her back, like gills. Though that's not what they are. They twitch and pulse as she pushes air out of them to make sounds. Then I heard the sound of her licking something off of her fingers and claws. I cringed. Shaya hummed thoughtfully. And butter, she added. I finally mustered a look at her. Her skin was gray and dabbled with white and sky blue. A trail of long, coarse hair started from her head and traveled down her back, continuing along the ridge of a long, coiled tail. Her ears were just holes in the side of her head, pulsing open and closed. "What are you doing here?" I asked, tightening the blanket around me as if it might be able to protect me if Shaya got it in her head to attack me. "Don't worry your little head. Shia hummed and leaned against the counter. She was smiling, or at the very least trying, to make the best approximation of a smile. Her face wasn't really built for it. Her skin pinched and stretched as muscles went against their typical use. Instead, she just looked like she was snarling. I almost appreciated her effort to give me a human gesture. On her, though, it just seemed like a mockery. I won't be here long, just needed to stop at a checkpoint. Her blue tongue darted out of a broad snout and licked residue out from under her claw. Is that what this place, my home, I thought as I gestured to the space we both stood in, is. I crossed my arms. It's generally not a great idea to piss off a creature that could thoroughly turn you into neat little cold-cut slices, but I trusted Shia's self-control enough to snark. Shia didn't like leaving a trail or a mess. Killing me would create both. The last thing she needed was the CCU catching a whiff of her scent. What would you call it? Her pale blue eyes rolled to meet mine. I looked away. The entire impulse had me turning my back to her. Not something you should usually do when faced with a predator. I trained my eyes to the window. Outside, the trees stood tall against a carpet of green grass. If I unfocused my eyes, her reflection would come into view. That way I could almost look at her. I wouldn't call a place I lived in for almost 2 years a checkpoint. I responded. I remember the day I came home and he was gone. The place had felt so empty the days following. And again, I apologize. She wasn't sorry. I could hear it in her voice. I needed Cran to stay put. You know how tricky this can get. I never asked to be a part of this. I wanted to say it. Instead, I didn't say anything at all. Shea shifted from one foot to the other, then finally got out of my kitchen. I felt her air as she passed me. It was like the essence of a hurricane came with them. Dark, foreboding. It washed over me like cold water. Goosebumps prickled around my arms. Blood roared in my ears. My heart fluttered wildly in my chest, straining, afraid, slamming itself against the constraints of its cage. Then it stopped. She was past me. Shia paused at the front door, her fingers on the knob. A residue of oils smudged the shiny surface. One peculiar thing about Shia was that she always snuck her way in. But going out, she always used a door. She spared me a look, then said, "You are also out of chicken," and promptly left. I sighed, because I knew I had bought some yesterday. Story number 4. It started when I first heard the music. I'm not going to tell you how I came into possession of this particular music, nor am I going to tell you what it sounded like or anything particular about it, because even knowing these things can have an effect. All you need to understand is that this particular music, when I heard it, forced me to walk in a straight line. I was at home at the time, in my London flat. I had started to listen to the song with my wireless headphones. As soon as the music started, I felt the itch to start moving. By then it was already too late, but I kept listening, not yet aware of the mistake I was making. And then, just as the first track neared its end, I rose from the sofa, turned and faced the wall, and started walking. Have you ever seen an NPC in a video game walk into a wall? Or a speedrunner trying to clip through a wall to get to areas of the game map they're not supposed to? I had walked over to the wall and onto the armchair, which kept me from the wall. After standing on the armchair, I just kept walking into the wall, knocking off a picture frame. The thing was, the music was fresh to my ears and still playing, so its effect was at its strongest. I was completely lucid of what I was doing, but that part of my brain that would signal for me to stop simply didn't exist anymore. The closest thing I could compare the feeling to is being in the throes of an addiction, whether it be pornography, or drinking, or even gambling. You know what you're doing isn't good for you. You have to stop. But there's just something not there. The will, the care factor. Did it hurt headbutting the picture frame of my recent university graduation photo off the wall? You bet. Did I care? Certainly. I wanted to stop with every fiber of my being, but I just simply couldn't. I kept going, walking against the wall, feeling the coarse wallpaper rubbing against my brow and rubbing at the skin. I think I lost a few eyebrow hairs in the process. In under a minute, I reached the corner of the living room. There should have been nowhere else to go, but stopping simply wasn't an option. I had hoped, though I couldn't stop, and I was pretty sure I was having some kind of stroke by this point, that reaching the wall would ease the burden, to keep moving in a straight line. Thing was, I was already off the line, and it hurt. Worse than any migraine, or worse than any flop sweat indigestion. And still, the music continued to play in my head. I was on to the second track, but its effect was still the same. Keep moving. Stay the line. I reached for the door handle, found it locked, so I took a moment to unlatch it. Then the door opened, and I stepped out onto the small balcony, and I kept walking. This was where I feared I might walk straight off the balcony. Below there was a car, which I had to rapidly consider as the least worst option to jump down onto. Besides the car, which was a simple four-seater, all that remained was a drop which would likely break my ankles. That was when I discovered some freedom to my situation. I didn't have to simply fling myself over the balcony. There was no stopping, but I had a tiny bit of my brain to work with, to decide how I would get back to the true line, instead of just up and overing myself over the balcony railing. I stopped, climbed over carefully, and then did my best to control my fall onto the car. I landed with a thump, landing squat, and the car's alarm started going off. It was midday, so the odds of people nearby seeing what I had just done was high. Did I want them to see me do it? What if they thought I was trying to do damage to the car on purpose? I moved down to the front of the car and slid on down the front windscreen on my butt. I was wearing slippers when I started playing the music. They looked like large, fluffy, monster paws. I was also wearing baggy PJ bottoms, a loose-fitting gray t-shirt with short sleeves, and a navy bathrobe, which was currently untied. My mobile phone was tucked into my right bathrobe pocket, and I had the headphones on my head. The only other item of note on my person were my glasses. I'm nearsighted. On the ground, I just kept walking, moving diagonally across the estate. Should I shout for help? I thought. The music was so loud it was making it harder to think, too. I thought about taking the headphones off, but the idea of doing so made me almost keel over and vomit. I passed 2 cars and the edge of a large estate building, and approached a small garden area with a path which led through to the middle part of another complex. I knew the true straight line would take me through the very thick green bushes ahead of me, but I found I could muster just enough willpower to walk onto the concrete path. It was like a bargain, with whatever it was about the music that was forcing me to keep on the line. I'll return to the line immediately after. Just let me walk around, I thought, and I found I could do just that. I walked the path, stomping ahead in my big goofy monster slippers, and kept going. This took me through a garden area and then into a small car park. It seemed at first the natural progression was to leave the car park through the way the cars would exit on the right. But that, I quickly discovered, was way too far from the true line. So like when I had walked to the corner of my living room, I had to walk to the corner of the car park too. Throughout all this, I tried to understand why it was I couldn't find the will to take my headphones off, or to stop walking altogether. It didn't help that it felt amazing to stay on the true line, better than taking off socks after a long day. Better than the first sip from a freshly cracked open can. Better than Friday night at the end of the work week. And that was just the start of my love of true line. At the corner of the car park, there was a small, little, hut-like structure. I walked to the edge of that, climbed over a metal railing. Then I walked through a small tunnel to the other side of the estate building. This put me onto the pavement on the other side, and then I walked into the road. The sudden horrible screech of car ties met my ears. I turned and saw a rotund, middle-aged woman in her car. "What are you doing?" she yelled out, though most of what I could hear was still being drowned out by the music. "I can't stop," I yelled back. This answer didn't seem to be good enough for the woman. She got out of her car and started walking towards me. "Stop. Come here," she yelled. Stop, I thought. The idea of stopping revolted me, but a part of me wanted to try. This woman was angry, sure, but what if I could get her to take the headphones off for me? Maybe that would give me back my right mind. But the closer she got to me, the more a nasty dread gripped me on the inside. Panic, unlike anything I had ever felt before, started to rise up within me. So much so that when the woman tried grabbing for my bathrobe, I let out a scream so loud I would have a sore throat for the rest of the day. I thrashed my arm back and the woman stopped in her tracks, perplexed by my reaction. I started to jog, staying true to the line. The woman didn't give chase, but instead, the last I saw of her, she had her phone held to her ear. Calling the police? I wondered. Or maybe her husband. I couldn't look back. For long, because I walked all the way down the road, crossed over to the other side of the street, and approached a large tree. "Please let me go round it," I pleaded inside my head. But I knew there was some wiggle room. As soon as I realized I could climb over the metal railing, thrash through the bush behind it, and then continue on, the fight in me to resist died out. I did just that, and moved beyond the tree. This took me into the driveway of another estate building at the furthest corner of the whole complex. It seemed like a dead end, because there were no gaps left. Right ahead there was just a house. I wanted to stop, but couldn't find the will to do so. The fifth track from the music album, "If You Feel the Need to Get Up from Where You're Sitting," that'll be, because I just mentioned the music was part of an album. I'm sorry. I'll not mention any more about the music if it can be helped. So I continued on, and found myself standing outside the house in front of me. The front door just off to my right, the window into what might be the living room to my left. I had hardly any time at all to think about what I might do next. Every second I didn't move forward was like being trapped inside a hot car with the windows shut. 100-fold. I tried the door handle to the house. No luck. I knew I didn't have the strength to kick the door down. But what else could I do? I saw in my mind's eye the solution. All I needed to do was drive my head through the window to my left. The glass would break if I hit it hard enough, wouldn't it? Some part of me was excited to try, intrigued even. I couldn't move forward on the true line if I didn't drive my head through the window pane. Please, I pleaded inside my head. Please no. There was an awful cramp in my neck as I forced my gaze to the ground. There was a small stone turtle ornament next to the doormat. I picked it up, and seeing as it was better than using my head, I smashed in the window with the stone turtle ornament. Move in, move in, move in. My body and mind pleaded with me, but I had just enough lucidity and self-control to use what wits I had left to strike away the sharper bottom and side edges of the window pane. And then I chucked the stone turtle ornament inside and climbed through the window. And it was after landing and getting to my feet that I noticed I had stopped moving. And there, on the carpet among the broken glass, were my headphones, the faint, tinny sound of the music on a new track. Again, I'm sorry that you've likely been counting the number of tracks which have been playing. I suggest you don't leave. You're home for the next few days because you might seek true line whilst driving or walking down the street. Please don't risk it. For a moment I was filled with joy. The headphones were off. I was free. Because without the music playing directly into my eardrums, how could it have control over me? To make sure I was free, I stomped on my headphones, my right foot aching from the force it took to render the headphones completely obsolete. I was stiflingly hot in my bathrobe, sweating and breathing huffing breaths. But in the silence of the house I had just broken into, I heard it. The music playing inside my head. I'm sorry to tell you this, I really am, but the music is seriously catchy. I turned around to face True Line and kept walking. It's been a while since it all started. I'm posting this using my phone whilst on the move. I'll try and explain more, but many obstacles lay ahead. Story number 5. I need to write this down while I still can. I don't know if they're coming back for me, or if I even have much time left before something happens. The truth is, I'm not even sure what did happen. My name's Henry. I'm 34. I guess you could call me a YouTuber, though that's not really true. I never posted anything. I had plans, big ones. But after this, I don't think I'll ever hit upload. I've always loved the outdoors. I grew up camping, hiking, all that Boy Scout stuff. Being out there always felt natural to me, like I belonged. So when I decided I wanted to start a channel, I figured solo camping vlogs would be perfect. That's what brought me to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I drove in, stopped at a little town on the edge of the park to grab some last-minute supplies, and then headed into the wilderness, my home away from home, for the next week. Or at least, that was the plan. I hiked deep into the forest, further than most people ever bother to go. The air was alive with bird song, and a cool breeze cut through the heavy summer heat. The scent of moss, dirt, and sun-warmed grass clung to everything. It was the kind of air that fills your lungs and makes you believe, if only for a moment, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. I found a clearing about half a mile from a small creek, secluded, quiet, perfect. It felt like mine the second I saw it. I pitched my tent, set up camp, and told myself I'd start recording tomorrow. Tonight would just be about soaking it all in. By the time I gathered enough firewood, the sun was already sinking behind the trees. I built a fire, simple but steady, and cooked myself an easy meal over the flames. As I ate, the sky darkened, and one by one the stars began to pierce through the twilight, until it seemed like there were more of them than I'd ever seen before. It was beautiful, the type of beauty that takes your breath or makes your heart skip a beat. But one star in particular caught my eye. It wasn't like the others. It pulsed, almost like it was breathing, flaring bright before fading to nothing, only to return again. I told myself it was just a plane, but deep down, I wasn't convinced. Eventually, I doused the fire and crawled into my tent. I didn't want to fall asleep under the open sky and wake up half-eaten by mosquitoes. I zipped myself into my sleeping bag, warm and comfortable, and for the first time in a long while, I drifted into a deep, easy sleep. The kind of sleep I haven't had since that night. The kind of sleep I may never have again. When morning came, I unzipped the tent, GoPro in hand, ready to film my first introduction video. I wanted to capture the moment, the start of what could be my breakout moment. But as soon as I stepped out and looked around, the camera slipped from my hand and hit the dirt. Because what I saw waiting for me was impossible. My campsite was a wreck. At first I thought an animal had gotten into it, but the longer I looked, the less sense it made. Nothing was torn apart or chewed through. Instead, every single item I owned had been moved, arranged. My gear was scattered across the clearing, like someone had laid it out on display. Pots and pans balanced on tree branches. My portable stove propped perfectly upright in the dirt. Tools lined up in a row, each thing placed with a strange, deliberate care, though no animal could have done that. I gathered everything up, trying to convince myself it was just some prank, though I knew that wasn't true. I should have packed up right then and left. Looking back, I still don't know why I didn't. Maybe I was stubborn. Maybe I was stupid. Either way, I stayed. I stayed one more night. The rest of the day passed in uneasy silence. Nothing else happened. Not until the sun set. That's when the nightmare began. I lay beneath the stars again, pretending it was all normal. But that star, the one that pulsed, was back. This time it wasn't just flickering. It looked bigger, closer. A sharp crack broke the quiet, and I whipped my head toward the tree line. For a moment my heart nearly stopped. Then a deer stepped into the clearing. It saw me, froze, then bounded back into the forest. I let out a shaky breath and turned, my eyes back to the sky. The star was gone. My chest tightened until I spotted it again, a little to the left, shining brighter than ever. That's when I realized it wasn't twinkling. It was moving, and it was getting closer. Then it came, a sound I'll never forget. A horrible, ragged scream, the kind of sound an animal makes only once, right before it dies. It was coming from just beyond the tree line. The deer, the same one I had just seen. I turned toward the noise, heart hammering, and that's when I saw them. Lights, glowing orbs drifting between the trees, weaving through the dark like they were alive. At first there was just one, then another blinked into existence. Then two more. 4 of them now, gliding silently, heading straight for me. One broke free of the trees and slid into the clearing. The moment it did, my campsite was swallowed in a blinding white light so bright it erased the world. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew I was already running. Barreling through the forest, lungs burning, sweat pouring down my face. I don't know how long I'd been at it. Minutes, maybe longer, but I couldn't stop. When I finally dared to glance behind me, my stomach dropped. The orbs were there, following me, keeping pace, floating effortlessly between the trees. I screamed and whipped my head forward, just in time to collide, full force, with something solid. For a split second I thought it was a tree, but it wasn't. What stood in front of me was not human. I'm 5'10", but this thing towered over me, easily 2, maybe 3 feet taller. Its frame was impossibly thin, almost skeletal, but when I slammed into it at full speed, it didn't so much as flinch. It was like hitting a stone pillar. It wasn't wearing clothes. Its skin was bare, a grayish purple that seemed to shift and ripple in the light of the orbs behind it. The head was wrong, too big for its spindly body, stretched and elongated. And then there were the eyes. They were massive, jet black, but not smooth like glass. Fine white lines crisscrossed through them, forming perfect hexagons, as though I was staring into a hive that went on forever. I screamed so loud my throat tore, praying someone, anyone, might hear me. That somehow I wouldn't be alone in that forest with this thing. It didn't move. It just lifted one long, stick-thin arm, ending in 3 elongated fingers. Slowly, it reached forward and pressed a single fingertip to my forehead. The instant it touched me, everything collapsed into darkness. When I came to, I was strapped to a table in a vast, empty room. The walls seemed to stretch forever. Featureless and smooth, humming with a low vibration I could feel more than hear. My vision was blurred, my ears muffled, like I was underwater, and then it leaned over me. The same creature, its enormous head just inches from my face. I broke down, sobbing, begging, pleading for it to let me go. I didn't care how pathetic I sounded. I wanted to live. I kept asking, why me? I'm a nobody, just a guy with a camera. Why would something like this want me? Was it just because I was there? Wrong place, wrong time. It didn't answer. It didn't even blink. Instead, it raised one hand and waved it very slowly over my face. Instantly, my body went limp. My panic didn't fade, not in my mind. In my head, I was still screaming, thrashing, clawing for escape. But my body betrayed me, going silent and still, pinned down by something I couldn't fight. Even my eyes resisted. I could only move them a fraction, and the strain made tears leak down the sides of my face. I had no choice but to watch. The creature lifted its arm. With a deliberate twist of its wrist, the skin along its forearm split open, and something slid out. Thin, metallic-looking, like a needle growing straight from its flesh. At the tip was a dark opening, hollow and waiting. Then I saw movement. From within that opening, something alive began to emerge. A worm-like appendage, branching into several writhing heads, each snapping and curling independently as it reached for me. And it was coming closer. The thing shoved the needle-like appendage straight up my nose. The pain was immediate and indescribable, sharp and searing, like my skull was being drilled from the inside out. I could feel the worm-like growth writhing through my sinuses, twisting, burrowing deeper. When it finally slid the needle back out, my nose and upper lip were slick with blood. The tip of the thing was crimson, dripping. If it noticed, it didn't care. The appendage retracted into its wrist with a wet sucking sound, vanishing beneath the skin as though it had never been there. Then the real pain started. A crushing pressure exploded in my skull, like a demolition derby was happening inside. My head, my body convulsed violently, every muscle seizing at once. I couldn't breathe. My jaw locked tight, tongue threatening to block my airway. My vision shrank down to a tiny, trembling tunnel of light. I thought I was dying. And then, just as suddenly, it all stopped. Air rushed back into my lungs. My body went slack. I could feel myself again, even tried to sit up, but something invisible still pinned me to the table. My chest heaved as I turned my head toward the creature. It was staring into me with those impossible, hexagon-filled eyes, studying me, measuring me. Then, for the first time, it spoke. It touched one long finger to the side of its head, and a voice, not from its mouth, but inside my skull, said, "Implantation complete. This one is compatible." My throat was raw, but I forced the words out. Compatible with what? The creature didn't answer. It just raised its hand again, touched its temple, and spoke once more, proceeding with full DNA extraction. The words echoed in my skull like a verdict. The alien didn't move for a moment, just stared at me, unblinking. Then a section of the wall behind it rippled open as though the metal itself had turned to liquid. From it, a set of instruments emerged, sleek, silver, impossibly thin. They floated into the air on their own, humming softly, their movements precise, deliberate, like scalpels guided by invisible hands. I tried to fight, to twist free, but the invisible weight pressing me into the table only grew heavier. My chest rose and fell in shallow, panicked bursts. The first instrument lowered toward my arm. A fine beam of white light scanned the skin, then made a soundless incision. No blade, no blood, just a seam opening up as neatly as if I were no more than fabric being cut. My nerves screamed, but there was no physical pain, only the unbearable pressure of being opened. Another tool descended, sliding into the incision, extracting something I couldn't see, a sickening tug deep inside my bones, like they were being hollowed out, molecule by molecule. I couldn't look away. The alien remained still, its enormous eyes locked on mine. Those hexagonal patterns in its gaze seemed to shift and rearrange, like data being processed. Sample integrity confirmed, the voice said in my head, flat and clinical. Proceeding. More instruments descended. My veins lit up like fire as something was drawn out of me. Blood, marrow, essence I didn't know. All I could do was stare into those black, perfect eyes, paralyzed, while they stripped me apart with the efficiency of a machine. There was no malice in it, no cruelty, just procedure. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I shut my eyes, tried to block it all out. The instruments, the pulling, the sensation of being hollowed out. At some point, my mind must have broken because I slipped into unconsciousness. When I came to, I was no longer on the table. I sat upright in a chair, my wrists and ankles still restrained, in a room that looked almost identical to the last. Smooth walls, featureless, sterile. Across from me sat 3 of them, identical, each the same height, same skeletal frame, same impossible eyes threaded with hexagons. No markings, no differences, nothing to set them apart. They might as well have been copies of one another. My voice cracked as I begged them to let me go, to tell me what was happening. Their reply froze the blood in my veins. They told me they had implanted one of their own inside me, that the worm-like creature wasn't a tool or a parasite. It was one of them, and now it had fused with my brain. That was why I could understand them. I wasn't hearing their voices. I was hearing the one inside me. I started sobbing, shaking my head, but they continued with perfect calm. They explained that most humans, Earthlings they called us, aren't compatible hosts. That's why they needed my DNA. To replicate me. To make more bodies they could implant with their own kind. When I asked why they would do this, why they would use us like this, they tilted their heads in eerie unison, almost puzzled by the question. To integrate with your kind more easily. One of them finally said, its voice cold and flat inside my skull. Conquering a planet is far simpler from within. Less damage to the resources. My chest tightened. What resources? Please, we could work something out. You don't have to conquer us. The 3 of them leaned forward at once, those endless black eyes reflecting me back 1,000 times over. You creatures are the resource. I broke down, pleading, screaming anything that might change their minds. But they were already finished with me. One raised a long finger to its temple again. Now we will return you. Go and spread our seed. That's the last thing I remember. Before waking up in my truck, parked just outside the entrance to the park. My clothes were clean. My gear was packed neatly in the back. The sun was coming up, like nothing had happened. But I know better. I wanted to believe it was all just some bad dream. It wasn't. I know it wasn't. I know because I can feel it in me. Every word I speak, I have to fight for against the thing in my head. Right, this was a struggle of its own. But the dead giveaway is my head. Under my hair I can feel it, like veins bulging out from under the skin. And I can start to see the lines forming in my eyes when I look in the mirror. They're coming for us, and we'll never even see them coming. Soon, we will be walking among you unnoticed. Story number 6. There are certain rumors that cling to a place, like the stench of stagnant water, unshakable, festering, retold until their edges blur. Our town has such a rumor, and it centers not on a house or a graveyard, but upon a lonely stretch of a county road where the pines press inward like conspirators and the fog seems bred from the earth itself. They say the road belongs to her, him, it, the hitchhiker. It takes many guises, yet its essence never alters. An intruder garbed in borrowed skin. I began collecting these accounts not from idle curiosity, but from a gnawing hunger that no rational man should indulge. I sought out those who had seen the hitchhiker, spoken to them, ferried them through that black-bowed corridor of asphalt. Their words came haltingly, thick with reluctance, as though each syllable carved something irretrievable from their memory. The first was a long-haul driver, one of those roughened men who seldom yield to superstition. He told me he picked up a girl in her 20s, backpack slung, smiling like she'd walked out of a roadside diner. They shared a cigarette. They joked about weather and wages. Then, mid-laughter, she leaned close and whispered in a voice not hers, but something ancient and androgynous. "You fat piece of shit. There's a reason your family left you. Now you will die choking, coughing black foam until what family you have left won't be able to look at you," he told me. He looked at her in anger and shock, but she was just smiling, as though she'd said nothing. He left her on the shoulder and drove until the sky bled dawn. He told me this while chain-smoking, his hands trembling so hard the ash scattered like snow. He died of emphysema less than a year after we had spoke. Then came the farmer's wife, a devout woman. Said she'd been driving home from Bible study when she saw a young boy on the roadside, clutching a teddy bear. So she stopped and opened her door to him. He climbed in. The scent of mildew and iron hit her, but she thought nothing of it other. Then she wanted to help the boy, so she offered him water and asked where his parents were. But he only stared. Then, with a sudden grin too broad for a child's face, he said, "God doesn't see you. He never did. When you kneel, you'd be better suited to be kneeling for cock rather than an empty throne." The woman swore his face collapsed in on itself as she watched in awe, like clay melting in flame, before he simply stepped out while the car was still moving. She wrecked her Buick in the ditch. Since then, she hadn't spoken the Lord's name without trembling. But then they found her dead inside the local church with the word "slut" written in blood across her forehead. As if my curiosity wasn't already. As piqued as it was, the sheriff himself, our so-called pillar of law, came to speak to me about how he'd once stopped on that same road as the others to offer aid to a middle-aged man in a suit, stranded and waving. The man slid into the back seat, polite, well-spoken, until suddenly he spat vile epithets about the sheriff's dead mother, detailed things no stranger could know. The color of her coffin lining, the hymn she hated sung over her grave, and then without missing a beat, started going into detail about the sheriff's wife killing herself and his daughter being a dirty little whore. The sheriff broke down into tears. Then, reacting on pure anger, he pulled over and hopped out of his patrol car with his gun drawn. But he found the back seat empty. He retired 2 months after we had spoke. And then they found him dead in a motel room with a shotgun in his hands, and his brains splattered all over the walls. So many stories, each wrapped in the same terror. The shifting of faces, the friendliness curdling into filth, the vulgarities that felt more like prophecies than insults, all ending in inevitable deaths. Yet for all the warnings, for all the trembling mouths that spoke them, my curiosity only grew. Some compulsion stronger than reason or faith gnawed at me. I needed to see her, him, to know if the hitchhiker would choose a face for me, to know what they would whisper in my ear before vanishing back into the fog. No two witnesses agreed upon their features, save that all had felt a nauseous terror when in its company, as though some formless thing pressed against the membranes of their minds. I had listened to these stories with the arrogant disbelief of one who thought himself immune to superstition, and yet something in their fragmented accounts stirred me. Not merely curiosity, but an urge, an almost perverse compulsion to see for myself. Perhaps it was the same instinct that drives men to the edge of cliffs. The whisper urging them to step forward into nothingness. So one night, under a moon bruised with clouds, I set out. The roads were narrow and unlit, hemmed by skeletal pines that rattled in the wind. My headlights carved two pale corridors through the dark, yet could not penetrate the blackness beyond the roadside. The silence inside my car was oppressive. Even the hum of the engine seemed swallowed by the night. Then I saw her, a figure, slender and still, standing at the gravel shoulder. The first thing that struck me was not her form, but her composure. Motionless, unbothered by the whipping wind, as if she had been waiting precisely for me. When my beams touched her, she raised her arm slowly, thumb out. My heart stuttered in my chest, for in that pale glow, I could not tell her age or face. It seemed to shift as I watched, first youthful, then matronly, then something inhuman in its formlessness. But when I blinked, she appeared merely as a woman of perhaps 30 years, with hair dark as pitch, and eyes luminous, too luminous in the cold light. I stopped, and then the door opened with a groan. She slid into the passenger seat with a grace that made no sound. Her scent was faint, metallic, like rusted iron. "Kind of you," she said, her voice warm at first, musical even. Not many stop anymore. I nodded mutely and pulled back onto the road. For a time, our conversation was unremarkable. She asked my name, and I told her. She asked where I was bound, and I answered vaguely. Anywhere, nowhere. I only wished to drive. Her laughter then was pleasant, almost girlish, but then, without warning, her tone curdled. "Your hands," she remarked, softly. "They look like the hands of a coward. Have you ever strangled a man? Or does your strength only reach as far as a woman's throat?" I glanced at her, startled. Her face appeared altered, the cheekbones sharper, the eyes sunken, her smile cruel. But when I blinked, she was again the benign stranger, gazing out at the forest with calm serenity. "Forgive me," she said sweetly. "I say such things without thinking. A bad habit." The road stretched on. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. She slipped again, moments later. "Your mother never wanted you, did she? I can smell it on you. She prayed you'd be stillborn, but you clung. Like a worm in her belly, I opened my mouth to speak, to protest, even but the words shriveled in my throat. Her face, in the dim light, was now ancient, as though the decades had melted her skin. Her lips peeled back from teeth that seemed longer than before. Then she laughed softly, as if the cruel words had never been uttered. "Oh, don't be so cross," I tease. The air grew heavy. A stench of damp earth and rot filled the car, though no window was open. My ears rang faintly, like a great pressure weighed against my skull. I felt the sensation of eyes upon me, not hers alone, but countless unseen gazes pressing from outside, beyond the glass, beyond the trees, as if the forest itself had leaned close to witness. I drove faster, and my breath came short. She hummed a tune beside me, low, droning, discordant. "You'll leave me soon," she said after a while, her tone wistful. "But you'll see me again. You all do. I wear many faces, many skins. Sometimes I am a daughter, sometimes a bride, sometimes I'm your own reflection, waiting at the bend in the road." Her head turned toward me then, slowly, impossibly far, until her chin nearly brushed her shoulder. Her eyes glowed faintly, like lanterns sunk deep in water. "Do you know," she whispered, voice thick with a guttural resonance, "what rides with you now?" The headlights flickered. For an instant, I swear the road dissolved into a vast black plain. Stars wheeling above and towering over all was a figure without form, wings, tendrils, limbs too many to count, its shadow falling across eternity. And then in an instant, the road was back. The pines, the gravel shoulder, too. My car shuddered, as though waking from a dream. She was gone. The seat beside me empty, though it was still warm, and the faint metallic stench lingered. I did not stop driving until dawn broke. I should have turned back. I should have left well, enough alone, but I tell you now, in the style of those ancient chroniclers of madness, that I know I will see her again. For in every reflective surface I have glimpsed since, in mirrors, in windows, in pools of rainwater, I have seen faces that are not my own. Some nights, when the wind is still, I hear her humming. After some weeks since that first encounter, the days since had not been days at all, but a disjointed succession of visions, interruptions, and choked awakenings from half-sleep. The presence of that woman, if such it is, had still yet to fully be departed. Every road I drive, I search for her. Not willingly at first. God knows I swore never to tempt fate twice, but rather as one whose wound festers despite his best efforts to bandage it. She does not merely haunt a single stretch of highway, but rather, she haunts me. It was a moonless night when I saw her again. My car, restless as my own mind, had carried me far beyond the town, into the black reaches of County Road, where no lamp stands, and where the forest presses close to the thin strip of asphalt. I had no intention of finding her, and yet I saw her. At first I thought it a trick of memory, merely a woman walking alone, thumb raised, the pale of her hand flashing in my headlights. But as the beams struck her form, I realized it was indeed her. Yet her face was not the same as before, nor was it different. It was a blasphemous compromise between the two, as though every feature were a composite of uncountable masks, and yet no one mask stayed long enough to be trusted. I slowed, though my heart implored me to keep going. My hands did not obey. As they turned the wheel and then opened the passenger door, she entered without ceremony. This time, her smile was wider, a thin wound of a mouth that curved too far. "I knew you'd come back," she said, her voice at once a purr and a hiss, at once the laughter of a girl and the groan of some oceanic beast in the deep. My throat closed around words, but I forced them out. "I don't remember choosing to." "Oh, you chose. You always choose. That's the curse of your kind. Thinking choices are made in moments, when really they were made ages ago." I looked ahead, unwilling to meet her shifting face. "Where do you need to go?" "Just drive," she said quickly, then laughed like glass shattering. I continued to drive as the silence stretched, broken only by her voice slithering in and out of moods. At times she was sweet, humming a tune that reminded me of childhood lullabies, only to stop mid-note and spit. "Your mother hated you, you know. She told me. She told us." At other moments, she was vulgar, her every word dripping with obscenity, describing my own body in degrading detail, as though she could see through flesh and bone to all the ugly parts that even I dared not name. "You're rotting," she whispered suddenly. "Right there, beneath the skin of your chest. You feel it, don't you? A soft place, a wrong place." I did. God help me, I did. My hand rose to my sternum and pressed, and for a moment I swore the bone there gave. She laughed again. The forest outside grew thicker, the road narrower. I realized, with a coldness deeper than fear, that I no longer recognized where I was. The mile markers had ceased, and the road signs vanished. She leaned closer, her face flickering between girl, crone, and corpse. "Do you know what I am?" she breathed. I tried to answer, but my tongue cleaved to the roof of my mouth. "I am everybody's last ride," she said, grinning with teeth that multiplied the longer I looked. "Every lost man's last companion, the hand they take when the road stops, the mouth that whispers before the long silence." "Do you want to know where I'm really going?" I shook my head, but she told me anyway. "I am going home, and you're coming with me." Her hand shot out, faster than thought, and pressed flat against my chest. Fire and ice coursed through me at once. My vision blurred. I could see the forest, bending away from us, trees contorting in terror as though they too feared her. She leaned into my ear, voice a jagged rasp. "Drive faster, faster. Take me all the way in." My foot, traitor to my soul, pressed the accelerator. The car roared forward, the world outside dissolving into streaks of shadow and pale mist. The last thing I recall clearly is her laughter, piercing, triumphant, unending. The road was gone, the car was gone, and I was no longer sure where my body ended and hers began. Now, as I scrawl this with what strength remains, I know she never truly left. She abides in the pulse of my veins, the tremor of my bones, and in the black corners of every room. Perhaps she abides in these very words, so that when another pair of eyes trace them, they too shall see the haunting hitchhiker standing by the roadside, waiting. You survived, for now, but the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.